How do you make sure that if you're selling your property directly to a buyer, a cash buyer such as myself, how do you make sure you don't get scammed? Because if you're selling through a real estate agent, there's laws and there's stipulations in place and rules of ethics to make sure that you're not going to be put in a position where it's either going to cost you money or you might end up being scammed out of your property. So what can you do when you're dealing directly with a buyer? Well, what I have is 3 quick tips that will help you with that. And I have them here written down. I want to make sure that I don't forget them. Tip number one is never sign the deed of your house over to anyone. Here's the thing. Sometimes offers may come that they'll say that they want to help you and that you have to sign over the ownership of the property temporarily before closing or anything of that nature. You'd never want to do that. The minute you sign a deed over of your property to someone else, then you lose control of that property. And many times you could actually, if you have a mortgage on the property, you could sign the deed over and yet still be responsible for the mortgage. And so you want to make sure that that doesn't happen to you, because that would be disastrous. So how do you do that? How do you make sure number one is never sign the deed over to your property. Then the second thing is you want to make sure that whatever documents you sign and whatever things you're involved with, you're doing that through a licensed and insured either title agent, because it depends on the state, title agent, escrow company, or attorney. Whatever your state is, like for example, I'm from Florida. We do deals all over the country, but I'm from Florida. And so in Florida, we use title companies, although an attorney can go ahead and close a transaction. In some states, it could only be an attorney. Whatever that state stipulations are, make sure that everything gets done through them. And that person is licensed and insured. So you make sure that there is not going to be any funny business at all. And then the only way that you're going to be able to sign the deed to the property is if you're doing it with a licensed and insured authorized person in your state. And you can actually verify this by, let's say you have a title company or you have an attorney. You could look up that attorney in the bar association for that particular state, make sure that they're licensed, make sure that there's no funny business. So that's item number 2. And item number 3 is that when you sell your property, you want to be able to do so with a HUD-1 statement. A HUD-1 statement is the Housing and Urban Development. It's a statement that just shows, hey, here are your costs as a seller, here's the cost as the buyer, and everything is laid out. Like, you always want to have that. If you're doing a closing and a transaction with your property and that is missing, that should have the alarm bells going off, because that means that it's not being done in a normal way. And again, we hear all stories all the time, all type of stories all the time where people get swindled and people lose control of their property unnecessarily. And I don't want that to happen to you. That's not the way we operate. And I want to make sure that, I don't want you to come to us and say, hey, I want to sell my property. And then later on we find that you have inadvertently given ownership of your property to somebody else. And now there's a lot of things that need to be done in order to unravel that. So those are my tips. And again, be safe. And again, this is Chris with National Property Buyer, and we'd love to make you an offer on your property, see if it makes sense for us to work together.